Rachel Reeves has told the country what she wants: a bigger fiscal buffer. Now, on the face of it, this is orthodox Treasury thinking. Gilt markets like prudence. But the OBR is about to mark productivity down. Debt interest is swallowing £1 in 10. So she has said everyone must do their bit. The trouble is that her chosen route looks like taxing Britain into inertia rather than building resilience. And that's why the pound sagged today, why business groaned today, and why her opponents scented blood within minutes of her Downing Street remarks today. So starting with her own logic, Reeves says three things must not be touched: no return to austerity, no cutting capital spending, no breach in her fiscal rules, because that would push up borrowing costs. If you lock off these three areas and the OBR tells you the growth engine is weaker, there is only one big tap left, and that's tax. Not boutique taxes that raise millions, broad-based taxes that raise billions and that people actually notice, which is why she repeatedly refused to repeat the manifesto sentence about income tax, national insurance and VAT. She knows that sentence is now a problem. So why can she simply not tax harder and call the difference a cushion? Three reasons. First, the base she is about to squeeze is the same base she says she wants to grow. If you bump up income tax by 1 or 2 pence, or extend fiscal drag to 2030, you collect money, but you also tug consumption down and tell households that the state will quietly take more money every year. That dulls the very growth that you would have repaired the hole with in a less painful way. Small firms heard her speech and immediately complained that policy uncertainty is freezing hiring. They are right. You cannot trumpet a budget for growth while floating more top slicing of earned income. That signals that the signals contradict each other. Second, the British tax system is already too complicated and too reliant on hidden rises. The Brown and Darling years were a problem. They built layer upon layer of reliefs, thresholds, rent like PFI and income-linked contracts so the public couldn't see the true cost. Reeves is now about to repeat that habit in a harsher climate. The resolution-style wheeze that has been flying around Whitehall is 2 pence on income tax and 2 pence off employee national insurance. Workers are told they are held harmless. Pensioners, landlords and self-employed and partners in LLPs are not. That raises roughly £6 billion. It also shouts to the country that clever Treasury engineering is being used to break a plain English manifesto pledge. Voters spot that sort of cleverness in seconds. Third, taxing into misery doesn't automatically create the thicker buffer she wants. Markets liked the tone of responsibility this morning, yes, but even Bloomberg was pointing out that the hole may be smaller than feared. In that case, taxing more than you need becomes a political choice, not an economic necessity. And political choices carry political costs, especially when your polling has already been punctured by Reform UK sitting ahead of you in some surveys. You do not widen your room for manoeuvre by shrinking your electoral coalition. Now look at the response. Kemi Badenoch ran straight at the weak point. She said Reeves is making excuses, that Labour is shrinking the definition of working people, and that there is another road, which is to get the welfare bill down. She didn't promise to reverse Reeves's rises, which is telling, but she planted the idea that Reeves is choosing tax over reform because it is ideologically comfortable. Mel Stride piled on by accusing her of refusing to take responsibility. That gives the Conservatives a simple line for Prime Minister's questions tomorrow. They will ask why the Chancellor, who said she had fixed the public finances last year, is already coming back for more. Nigel Farage took the easier populist road. His line was that you cannot trust a word she says. Reform now has poll numbers that make that attack sting, because it sounds like he is saying what many Labour voters are muttering in private. A party that promised not to raise the main taxes is about to raise the main taxes. That is a trust breach. And when a trust breach happens while reform is already ahead in some YouGov work, it looks reckless. Even Labour's friends were cautious. The TUC said fair taxes should go first to the wealthiest and to sectors like gambling and banking before they go near ordinary earners. That is not a full-throated cheer. That is a warning not to make the same people pay twice. Economists quoted this morning were blunter. They called it choreography. They said the message is clear, tax rises are coming, and when the choreography is obvious, the political sting is worse because people feel managed. Add to that the Conservative Memory Bank. They remember Norman Lamont's 1993 turn after the 1992 pledges. They remember the damage. Commentators are already making that comparison. Reeves is risking being placed in that line of chancellors who promised stability and then reached for the simplest lever. History is not on her side here. There's also the point that no one in government seems willing to voice. If we are going to have Scandinavian levels of extraction, then we should have Scandinavian clarity. In Sweden, the local levy sits inside the headline rate, so people can see what they are paying, what they are paying for childcare, transport, and social care. Here we have income tax, then frozen thresholds, then council tax on a 1991 valuation, then stamp duty to move house, then national insurance that is not really insurance, and Reeves is about to add more burden to a structure that is already incoherent. She is not simplifying in exchange for more money. She is complicating and taxing, and that is why the argument that people do not mind paying taxes if they get good services is not working. At the moment they're paying more and getting less. Potholes, a phone queue, lists, NHS chaos. Tax without visible gain breeds cynicism. There's one last inconsistency. Reeves said there is not as much room for spending cuts as her opponents claim. She pointed to reform putting council tax up in Kent and to Tory plans for 47 billion of cuts that would shred services. That is clever knockabout. It doesn't answer the question of why Labour has been so cautious about the parts of welfare that are clearly failing. If you will not confront low productivity in the public sector, if you will not revisit the poor value private contracts of the new Labour era, if you will not trim the parts of the state that are simply underperforming, tidy up the bureaucracy, then of course you are left taxing people who already feel squeezed, and that is not inevitability, that is choice. You are paying for the large cars of the rich NHS CEOs. Rachel Reeves could have said this. The OBR has turned the weather. We will raise some money now. We will simplify the system. We will show you what you get. We will cut the wasteful contracts you all complain about. Instead, she said, everyone must contribute. Refused to repeat the pledge. Kept every big spending promise and promised a bigger buffer. That is fiscally tidy and politically clumsy. Her opponents have noticed. Badenoch will say tax is Labour's only idea. Farage will say this proves Labour talks left and tax is right. Stride will say the Chancellor is blaming everyone other than herself, and inside Labour there will be a quiet fear that the one tax rise voters always notice is the one they were told would not happen. On today's evidence, that fear seems justified.